I'm excited to moderate a great panel with some wonderful brands. We're going to talk about integrated marketing across channels. Interestingly, we're going to try to share some secrets here. There are lots of brands in the room. Hopefully, there'll be some key takeaways from this panel. But we do have 3 great brands, 2 of which are somewhat competitive. So hopefully they'll be willing to share some of their deep, dark secrets on what works in cross-channel marketing. So I guess let's start by introductions. Craig Swerdloff, I'm the CEO of LeadSpend. We're a email validation company. To my left here, we've got Kevin Hickey. Kevin is the global manager of lifecycle and email marketing at Intercontinental. We've got Florence Ho, who's a senior director, loyalty and direct marketing at Wyndham Worldwide. And then we've got Con Lee, the manager of online marketing at Chico's. Clearly consumers are distracted, right? There's social media, there's email, there's lots of different channels, and consumer attention is distributed across these channels. So, let's talk about integrated marketing and sort of what your definitions are for integrated marketing first. At least let's set the table for that. So Kevin, why don't you start us off?
Good. Well, thanks. And I think the way that we define it, it all starts about understanding what we know about customers and what they do. Customers are more informed. They demand greater relevance. They control the purchase process, and from our standpoint, marketing a dozen hotel brands across 100 countries is pretty complicated. So the way that we really define integrated marketing is really making sure that we're delivering a consistent guest experience for our members of our loyalty program, as well as just guests who stay at our hotels in general. They don't care that how we're organized. And I think most of us are organized by channel. But it's really that consistency across channel that defines it for IHG.
Yeah, perfect. And I know you're going to talk about sort of the inputs and outputs of data across channel later, so that'll be interesting to tie into it. So, Florence, what about you? What's your definition of integrated marketing at Wyndham?
I actually oversee the marketing for the loyalty program that we have for Wyndham Hotel Group. It's called Wyndham Rewards, and we have 14 brands right now participating in our program. In terms of integrated marketing, for us, it's all about going where the consumers are, our targeted consumers are, and having planned relevant communications to target to each consumer group that reinforce one another across channel, as well as deepen that relationship with them. So it's really just about having, like Kevin said, having the consistency across channel as a loyalty program, deepening that relationship with them, and of course driving them to take the next level of action that we want them to take with the program.
Con, how about you? Chico's.
I think I'm with Kevin and Florence. Consistency is the key term here. You want to have a consistency of messaging across all your channels, whether it be direct marketing, whether it be mobile or email, social, so that to get into the mindset of the customers, looking at her purchasing behavior, and getting to the communication, the touch points, and having a consistent message across the board, so that she sees, even though it's different channels, it's one brand.
That makes sense. So all 3 of you talked about consistency across channel, but I remember when email was still young and folks were talking about consistency between direct mail and email, and how folks tried to repurpose a lot of sort of brochureware for email, and the channel, it didn't work, it didn't make sense. So is consistency across channel really the critical thing here? And is it sometimes better to not be consistent and to focus more on the channel and the unique sort of aspects of each channel? Anyone care to answer?
Well, I'll start. I think from a content perspective, what we try and do, at least on an outbound perspective, is to make sure that content is customized by different formats. So here's your message. Let's make sure that it's usable and driving engagement and response and revenue across mobile, social, email, and what have you. But then on the back end, it's also taking that behavior and then using that information to help drive and influence subsequent messaging. So getting smarter by recognizing what customers are doing.
And to add to that, I mean, I think for the Chico's brand, it's, you know, you're having a consistent message, but utilizing each channel, like for email, for new customers, for example, when she comes into our brand, you know, we hit her with, for example, we can hit her with a postcard that says, thank you for signing up, or thank you for making that first purchase, but you reinforce that in an email world, you know, you present like the latest image for her, and reinforce that thank you messaging. But then there's different life cycles that you can go. So it's looking at customer clusters, what types of customers they are, and how do we use, you know, the mobile channel, how do we use the email channel, and pulling out the best practices from each of those channels to talk to her, but having a consistent message, a consistent content. So you're, you know, you're one brand speaking to her as opposed to fragmented messages.
I think by nature of each of the newer channels, I think you just need to change up the messaging a little bit to make sure that it works in that channel, mobile being shorter messages, right, and social being more personable and more informal in a way. But, you know, the point about planning ahead and having each channel reinforce one another, so all the messages can work together to drive the consumer to take that desired action is key. Now that we all have more channels to manage, I think it's really important to plan ahead. And we also talked about resource issue earlier today, that because you know it's just getting more and more complex, if we want to do it more in a more sophisticated way with more being more targeted and relevant across all of these channels, it's just really important for us to plan ahead, think through for each of the channel, all the different stages across the life cycle, or you know throughout a promotion, to make sure that we craft those messages in advance to prepare for answering to each of you know, address each of the stages during that time period. So
makes sense. I don't remember who said it before, but you know, as marketers, brand marketers, you must cringe every time a sort of new social platform emerges, right? Because it just adds to the amount of work you have to do in order to get your message out and communicate with your customers. So technology seems to be the big enabler, right? At the end of the day, you've got to have a platform that allows you to communicate with your customers across these channels in a seamless, easy way, right? Operationally, it must be very difficult. So maybe if you could talk about some of the technology that enables you to do that effectively.
Well, for us, we can identify customers' purchasing behavior, like where she's shopping from, so that when we're looking at segmentation or life cycle, you know, we don't just look at, you know, who's an online shopper, who's an in-store shopper, or a call center. We look at, you know, customer A, where has she shopped in the last 6 months, for example, versus, and then we can, even if she doesn't click through in an email or she doesn't open an email, we can still tie it back. We're driving her to the boutiques or to the stores, or we're driving her to the call center. So that's one of, you know, that part of technology really helps us looking at customer purchasing behavior holistically rather than by channels.
Yeah, I'll add to that as well. Technology for us is a huge enabler. It gives us what we call a single view of the customer. We've done a ton of data consolidation to get rid of the fragmentation of databases that exist between online and offline and storefronts and our hotels and all of that. And it's also a huge enabler in terms of marketing automation. If it weren't for technology, we'd be really constrained to deliver a lot of the right time trigger type messaging, which is driving the volume for our growth. So, you know, technology it's complicated, but it's a necessity, and it's a huge enabler for what we do.
Florence?
yeah, I second both of what they said. I think that with email specifically, it's getting a lot easier now to do like cluster analysis, segmentation, that sort of thing, based on the behavior, past behavior, click and open and all of that, for us to be able to use that information to plan out what the cadence should be for each customer group. So, I think that piece is getting more and more manageable. I think that it's pulling together all of the data from the other channels and being able to use all of them together is what a lot of the companies still are trying to get at, to do it simpler and not have it be so laborious.
Time consuming.
Yes.
Con, did you want to add something?
No, I was just going to say earlier in the breakfast presentations where, the number one constraint is database. Like, I've been in other previous companies where there were 5 different databases, and, each of them would churn out a different set of numbers for the same metric for revenue for customers, and each of them would turn out a different numbers, and it was just a headache trying to figure out, well, which one do I use? But I think, with technology and being able to partner with your ESP to tie back all the information, and having, I think one of the things is Chidimo was able to deliver to us back like open metrics and click metrics so that we can tie that back into our overall database. And you can see I sent out campaign A. These are the customers that took some behavior, email behavior, that ties back to she made a purchase in store. These are the amounts. So that was really helpful for us to do life cycle planning.
A show of hands from the marketers in the room. How many folks here have a single integrated database that, or have single integrated database? Let's show of hands. One. Wow. Oh, we got some more. Okay, we got a few. We could probably have a whole panel about database management and integration just in database, right?
It's amazing. The next panel is on that topic, Craig. Thank you for the lead.
That was my lead-in. There we go, Morgan. So let's talk about customer acquisition. Della, Jordan, their favorite topic of conversation. How do you go about attributing customer acquisition by channel, right? With multiple touch points with consumers today, you're out there acquiring new customers, be it organically or otherwise. But how do you attribute the channel and the spend, the marketing spend, back to the channel that originated or that played a part in acquiring that customer? Who would like to start?
I could start. I think for us, we rely more on direct mail to do the customer acquisition part, and also social is also a good acquisition tool with, all these sweepstakes and the games that, we have on Facebook and Twitter. But we, as a marketing and CRM team, we have recently redefined what we consider acquisition for us. When a customer comes in through a sale promotion and she makes one purchase, that's not, and then she doesn't come back for another 6 or 8 months, that's not a valuable customer for us. So we have opened up our definition of, acquisition. Is that first purchase considered an acquisition, or do we need to get her to make multiple purchases? And then, so that's an acquisition process. So we utilize direct mail to do the initial, handshake with a new potential customer, but then we use the email channel and the social channel to reinforce that acquisition process so that, to get her to encourage her to make the multiple purchases afterwards, and then she becomes, in our regular database as an active customer.
Again, I work on the loyalty program, so we don't really do a lot of broad-based advertising. A lot of our channels are tracked, so, we have people who come to our hotel, so we get enrollments into the loyalty program that way, people who book on our website, that sort of thing. So everything is pretty much trackable. I would say we also run online media as well, quite a bit of that, and that's also trackable. So we store all of that information in our database, and similar to what you were saying, once we get them into the program, that's when our engines start to work with all the different email, direct mail, all the different communication and life cycle marketing that we do to get them to come back again and do more business with us.
Yeah, and very, very similarly, we're fortunate that we do the majority of our list growth organically. So, through our websites, our call centers, the hotels themselves. I mean, the vast majority of new Priority Club, our loyalty program enrollments, do come from either the hotels or the call centers. And you look at how the response and revenue performance of those enrollments, because we do tag those at the source, vary. A lot of there's a lot of fat fingering that happens in an offline world. You know, in terms of deliverability, like we have much higher response rates from those who enroll into the program from the web, because we do occasionally have some deliverability issues with bad addresses just being collected offline. But I think, you know, one thing to add to that is there's also transactional emails, and we've spent the last 2 years working with StrongMail to really dial up inserting the marketing message into our transactional emails, because, you know, we don't just have a data problem, we have a permission problem. And really leveraging transactional, what customers are already receiving as part of engaging with our brands, and using that to then get them to opt into our marketing programs and our newsletters and things like that. That's been a huge win for us.
That's interesting. I mean, the point about the value of a subscriber who comes from the web versus coming from offline is an interesting one. And you know, curious, kind of like, you know, you sort of communicate with consumers based on perception around which channel they want to be communicated to, right? Do any of you have preference centers where you actually ask people which channels? Yeah, you all do. But presumably you also use other information around sort of how they were sourced, right, or where they choose to interact. And how does that affect lifetime value? So is a you know, consumer who interacts primarily or responds to email, you know, how much more valuable is that consumer versus another one who doesn't, who maybe interacts via social or direct mail?
I can start. For email, I would say that it's one of the top ones. What we've seen is that people who come through our properties already, our hotels already, they have a relationship with us, and those tend to be more valuable. But at the start, I would say email, it's not the most valuable channel. But once we get them into the program, the email program, we do see that very quickly the people with an email address do, it's easier because we can communicate with them more and very frequently and with very targeted messages. So what we've seen is that people who have email address on file tend to become much more valuable over time. So,
how much more valuable?
Can't say. A lot more valuable. And I do see that as we all become more sophisticated with leveraging mobile, I think that mobile will probably in the future be just as work the same way as email as well. So.
For us, our CRM team did a lot of analysis where they looked at mobile shopper or email or online shopper, store shopper, call center shoppers, and what they found is, out of all of those groups, the most profitable customers are the ones that utilize all different channels. We're learning that our customers are catching up to the time. Chico's is an older brand, White House is like the middle professional, but overall, among all the brands, our customers are catching up to us, and she likes to be communicated via all the different channels. She can be primarily a store shopper, but she likes receiving that email communications. Even just to see the subject line, if it says sale up to 60% off, that drives her to the store. So whenever we can identify shoppers that are siloed to a specific channel, we have initiatives to convert them into multi-channel shoppers, because those are the most valuable ones for us.
Yeah, I think I'd add too as well. We're somewhat channel agnostic in it, but there's a primary push to get guests in general to join our loyalty program, because we do know that they spend more with us, they stay more with us, they cost less as a consumer. So there's a huge push from a loyalty program perspective, and we do try and emphasize choice and control back to the consumer.
Just curious, sort of different channels that are used. So social media obviously is important probably for all three companies. You probably have different demographics, different audiences. Certainly Con, you're probably more female-based oriented. So what are sort of the new channels? Is Pinterest interesting to you guys yet? Is that on your radar?
It's on our radar. I think our social team that falls within the social team, they're still trying to figure out how to leverage that right now. I think, one of the issues that we run in with the social media world is, obviously from an e-commerce standpoint, you want to get the customers to the site so that she convert or make a purchase. But whenever we message like a social media banner or message about Twitter or Facebook, that drives her away from the site. So what we're doing right now is trying to figure out for those traffic that's going to Facebook instead of going to Chicos.com, how do we get those traffic to come back to Chicos.com? And that's part of the integration messaging, the consistency in content. So with pin interest, I think the first step is to how to get pin interest to tie to the mainstream social media right now, Facebook and Twitter, and then how do we integrate that into our overall marketing strategy.
Interesting. Okay. So Kevin, you had mentioned we talk about inputs and outputs. Integration, cross-channel integration is about sort of inputs and outputs. Inputs being data, outputs being messaging, right? Choosing which channel to message with, and creative optimization, so on and so forth. Kevin, you mentioned that getting a single view of the customer is really important for your company. So. Can you share some specific examples of data on the input that you guys use to tailor the message, and then how is it used specifically within IHG?
Yeah. I think it's what we're very good at is integrated marketing from a multi-channel standpoint. We're great at pushing out messages across all of our channels, leveraging all of our customer touch points. Finally good at that because we had to reorganize, so we finally answered the question internally about who owns the customer. So we're great at pushing things out. What we're not so great, but really delving into it now, is that cross-channel, is the learned behavior from what customers do in other channels and helping to influence how that determines messaging in other channels. But it's really on the ground for us right now, so shifting from multi-channel to cross-channel for us, just as some examples, like it's a long conversation for us to integrate content with our search team. We're finally making it a two-way street, and throw social in there as well. If we have to drive likes and traffic to the social sites, by all means, you should be collecting addresses for us. Same for search. If we're running display ads for somebody to stay at a Crowne Plaza or an Intercontinental brand, if somebody isn't ready to convert and make that purchase right away, collect that address, put them in our newsletter, and we'll use them to 3 months, convert them later on. So I think those are some of the things that we're doing right now.
I was going to say, I was searching Crate and Barrel the other day, and Google has this new feature where you can actually sign up on the search field. So I thought that was interesting as the first, initial step into having that cross-channel integration.
Sure, the lead gen in the Google search result.
Yeah.
Anyone here using it? Anyone on the panel using that yet?
We're going to be piloting that in next month in May, so we'll let you know how it goes.
We'll come back next year.
Gratefully, they're paying for it, and that was a 3-month conversation.
I love it when Google's paying for your ads. That's great.
No, our search team.
Oh, there
Right.
you go. That's not quite as good. Anything to add, Florence? Did you want to? Okay. Con, you had talked about something, an interesting program that you were testing with your ESP, I think Cheetah, right?
Yes.
Called browser remarketing. Tell us about it, please.
Sure. So, our account team at Cheetah Mail presented to us this opportunity to do browser remarketing on the website. Basically, we had launched a Abandon card and just, brainstorming. We're like, well, what if she never gets to that cart page? She's on the site and we call it customer sheet, but she's on the site and she's searching and then she just abandons that page. How do we get her to come back to that page and then get her to the cart? So it's taking a look at the step ahead. And we tested a few categories on our Soma Intimates brand, Soma.com. So if a customer is browsing through a bra page, we want to be known as a destination for bras. So if she's browsing one of the bra pages and she leaves, we worked with Cheetah Mail to basically remarket to her and send a triggered message, all about bras, talking about our styles that we have, bra fit tools, videos. You can go in a store and you have a personal one-on-one with the associates. So that was a triggered message that was sent out to anyone who abandoned any of the bra pages on our website. And we, based on the test, we saw great results from it. We saw good conversion, and the triggered message didn't have any offer. It was just a basic branding message, so it was incremental conversion for us, and that was a really good test. And I think, you know, we're looking to roll it out to other departments and pages as well.
That's very smart. Florence, I have a question for you. You talked about email being a major driver of conversion in social and mobile and other channels. Can you describe those programs in more detail and maybe share a few examples of how it's being used?
Over the past year or so, we've been trying to build up our presence on Facebook, for example, and email. I think this was talked about earlier today too, that email is a great source for getting people to like you on Facebook. So for us, it's more about making sure that we are where our consumers are and allowing them to choose how many channels by which they want to interact with us. So getting them to like us on Facebook just is another way for them to interact with us based on what their preferences are. That's what we've been doing with that, feeding the other channels with email.
Certainly feel free, Kevin, Khan, if you have anything to add in terms of using email as a driver in other channels. I don't know, do customers interact, do they purchase via social, via Facebook, for example? Or is it all through the web and phone for you, Kevin?
Yeah, it's primarily web and phone. Of course, there's mobile web as well. Social for us is really primarily used for branding, for service recovery, as well as for what I think is kind of neat, and this is a big value of social that I finally bought into is helping to fill a lot of the voids that we do have in our data. So I like where that's going, but traditionally everything's through our call center or web or the hotels themselves.
For us, social, we do giveaways and small sweeps and small contests that give away certain products from the brands. But I think our Facebook and Twitter's media is more for brand awareness. Our customers also use Facebook as a way to provide rating or reviews on our products, even though we do have ratings and reviews on the site. She used it as a forum to talk to other customers about the quality and what she's buying and the shirt that she bought and it fits great, or just sometimes say, I bought this in different color and this is the one I like best, this color didn't fit so well. So it's more of a community for our customers to really talk to other customers.
I want to add to that, right now we have on the loyalty website, we have incorporated TripAdvisor comments on our website, and that's worked out really well for us from a increased conversion standpoint. And email does a lot with driving people to input a comment, put up a comment on TripAdvisor, and that also helps us get more comments on the website. So.
Presumably those are moderated comments?
No, TripAdvisor is totally open.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Interesting. Does that keep you up at night ever?
It was. I think it took a long time for the organization to decide to move ahead with it. And what we did was we tested with the loyalty program first, and then it's been rolled out to all the other brands, and it's worked out fine. I think it's very much self-policing with TripAdvisor. The hotels care about it because it's comments to their hotel that it's made very public, and at the end of the day, it does impact their business. So. You can't hide from it. It's out there. You just need to make sure that you do the right thing to make a wrong a right.
So I do want to open it up to questions from the audience as well. If anybody has a question now, feel free to raise your hand, and then I've got a few other questions to come back to. We've got somebody here in the front.
Angela from Universal Music. I wanted to ask about your strategy on integrated marketing, not just across channels, but across brands, especially at Wyndham and IHG. I have to imagine you have customers in more than one brand or that upgrade to brands, and how you're dealing with that.
In terms of getting them to use multiple brands, or?
Yeah, multiple different types of hotels. I can't imagine they only go to one Wyndham hotel. I know I go to multiple.
Yeah, so we actually have multiple brands, from the more upscale Wyndham to economy and mid-scale brands like Days Inn and Super 8 and Howard Johnson even. So we have a lot of different brands within the portfolio, and the loyalty program is the one place where we try to cross-sell all of the consumers. So we do have pretty sophisticated segmentation scheme in place, statistical modeling in place to help us determine who would be a right consumer to try to get them to, expand their trial with multiple brands. I mean, you certainly have the people who only go to Super 8, that's their favorite brand, they only go to Super 8, but you also have consumers who are more open to testing other brands, and because, people go for travel or stay at hotel for different reasons, for business, for, along the way as they go to see grandma in Florida, there are a lot of opportunities for us to cross-sell because, some of our brands are for different, travel occasions. So I would say it's very much based on the models that was built and the segmentation, and for us to try and predict what the propensity is for people to try all the different brands.
Yeah, I'll add that as well. From a cross-sell and an upsell perspective, the bulk of our data, it's part of our segmentation efforts and what we call our brand hallmark messaging. If you as a business or even as a leisure traveler, because of your corporate travel policy or your per diem, primarily stay at a Holiday Inn. When we launch a new brand like Hotel Indigo, it's more of our boutique upscale brand. It doesn't have the footprint that Holiday Inn does, but we know that consumers like to trade up. You stay most of your time at a Holiday Inn, but it's nice to vacation at an Intercontinental as an example. So we use our cross-sell messaging to do that. If we know you're brand dominant in one aspect and there's a location that you travel to, and we might be able to cross-sell Indigo if it's in the market for you.
Is it difficult to get buy-in across brands, right? Presumably you've got folks who own those brands or managing the P&Ls for those brands don't necessarily want to lose shoppers to a new brand. Is that difficult to sell into the organization?
Yeah, that's a fun conversation. If you left it up to Intercon, they wouldn't have any other brand in their logo bar. It comes down to simple things like that, but we try and use data to drive the decision making as much as we can and remove a lot of the subjectivity out of those conversations. But you're still dealing with brand marketers who are very passionate about their identity, and hopefully the data helps solve for it.
And I think that's where the loyalty program helps, right? I think before my time, I've been with the company for 4 years, but before my time, it was a difficult conversation getting all the brands on board to have one loyalty program. But I think over time, they've seen the value, and we are also very data-driven. So as long as you can show them the benefit for each of the brand of supporting and engaging with the program, I think showing them hard data, what it brings, is the key.
I think the key to persuasion is the testing. I think it's important to look at your database. Each of our brand is very protective of their database, and the idea of prospecting across brands was just unheard of, or it was like taboo. But when we looked at our database, we realized who are our loyal customers, who do we define as new customers or fresh customers into the database. And the way we presented it is we can test each of a small segment of each group. And then from the testing, we saw that, the loyal customers, they like to be integrated multi-brands. Just because you send it to a new brand, we didn't see any, downgrade in their metrics in the original brand. But for the new customers, the thinking was that for new customers, you're still, the customer is still learning about the brand and still understanding what the brand is. So it wasn't necessarily the best strategy to introduce them to another brand because that might cause some confusion. And then that there's a propensity for choosing one or the other. But if someone's already loyal to one brand and you define how loyal means to you, whether it's based on lifetime spend or email behavior or overall shopping behavior, and then you can start prospecting into that type of customers.
So we talk about testing, right? But what are the metrics that are important to your bosses in terms of explaining the value of some of these integrated programs? right? At the end of the week or the month when you have to sit down with whomever it is and say, look at how this is performing, what are the metrics that you focus on to tell the story?
We focus on overall conversion, across all channels. So lifetime conversion, lifetime spend. Even if it's, when you're talking email, you're looking at active or inactive, but that all ties back to overall lifetime activity.
But it's sort of projected, right? Because a lot of times you've got, if you're doing testing, you got to get results quickly and determine what to do based on the short, quick results that you have. So you're projecting out lifetime value. Is that?
Yes, and based on the test, our team would take and apply that to the models that they have and see where that would end, in a couple of years and how they would respond.
We look at customer acquisition. So for the loyalty program, it's enrollments into the program, and ultimately incremental stays that we drive from the loyalty program. So it's comparing member versus non-member revenue and trying to gauge that incremental that the loyalty program brings.
So butts in beds.
Heads in beds.
Kevin, what are the metrics you guys focus on?
It's very revenue driven from an incremental standpoint, conversion, how efficiently we're driving that revenue through revenue per email, as an example. We try and factor in engagement, but I can tell you it's tertiary at best. Opens, clicks, but you can't forget the unsubs and complaints. And then, really looking at impressions as well. I swore I'd get through this without saying it depends, but it does. And we have a lot of subjectivity around metrics, and we just try and make sure that enterprise-wide that people understand the value of what we're measuring, how we're measuring it, and what marketers in general can do with it.
So
Sounds complicated. Morgan?
Yeah, just a question. One of the things I didn't hear was ROI, and I think in the email vertical we tend to talk a lot about the ROI of email. Is it a relevant conversation within your organizations to talk about ROI as the thing that makes email better, worse, whatever?
It's certainly a focus. We look at that all the time, and by looking at that, it does help to justify email because email is always one of the top ones.
Yeah, and we push it because we're at the top. There's varying definitions of how each of our different groups define it, though, and that creates difficult conversations. But it's absolutely part of every report that we put out, and I think really that's what drives a lot of the appeal is people become addicted because of the cost efficiencies and the performance of email, which tend to sometimes misuse it.
We definitely report out on it. I think within our world, you don't just look at ROI just because some of our, it's based on margin, and the messages in email for us is, if it's a poor timing, it's a lot of sale messages, so that does affect the ROI, but we look at ROI in conjunction with, how the overall lifetime conversion, like where she's shopping, overall shopping behavior across all channels, and ROI is within that bucket.
Question from the audience?
It's a quiet audience this
yeah,
morning.
Totally. I guess it's still early here. So Con, I think it was you said earlier in our conversation a couple of days ago that cross-channel shoppers are the highest value customers.
We have found them to be the more profitable ones. They're the more engaged ones. They're the ones that are more loyal to the brands.
It makes sense. So how do you go about sort of making sure that you collect the customer's information in various channels, right? So is it in store, asking for an email address? How do you go about doing that?
So we do have point of sale capture. If you, when you're in the store, you can, if you make a first purchase, our associates ask you for your information. The associates also ask if you want to join our loyalty program, which is our passport program. So that it collects the information, and once you're in the database, you're assigned a passport number, basically, and that's how we can track you and where you shop. and then we take that that new capture, and then we enroll her in our welcome program. And with our welcome program, we can identify where the types of customer, the types of new customer that you are, and where you're coming from. So if you are a new email to the brand via a first purchase, there's a message, a welcome message that's tailored to you. You know, it's a letter from our president, very sophisticated, through an email. If you are a new sign up, but you didn't make a purchase, you just wanted to sign up in stores to receive email, you know, you get a thank you message, and that within that first welcome message, there's an encouragement for conversion. And if you're returning, if you've been a customer with us for a long time, and you're in the store and you say, hey, I just want to receive your email from now on, that you get a tailored message about, you know, just thanking you for email sign up. So it's we use email as a reinforcement to the names that's captured at POS.
Kevin, Florence, how do you guys go about collecting data and you know, ensuring that you have multiple channels to communicate with your customers?
Collecting data meaning
Email address, you know.
Email address, I would say across all of the channels. I think that all the existing channels that we have, like on property in the hotel, we have a big push for having our front desk staff capture the email addresses. I mentioned earlier having email feeds Facebook, but we are also trying to do the same there too, within Facebook channel, to get people to give us their email and enroll into the loyalty program. So it's bi-directional, I would say. All the channels that we have website, we have run various types of incentives for consumers. They get X number of points if they give us their email addresses, they browse our websites, that sort of thing. So consumer incentive and leveraging all the different channels that we have available.
Yeah, for us, it's been less on the consumer incentive, but there's always the incentive when an agent's involved, when somebody calls the call center, even at the hotel level, which gets factored in. But you know, email address is one of 5 data points that we require when we add somebody to our database, just from a customer matching perspective: name, first name, last name, address, zip code, things like that. You know, there's not a whole lot I can do with just an address, but I can do much more if I know implicit and explicit preferences.
Makes sense. So I think we're out of time. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you, Con, Florence, Kevin. Appreciate you guys participating.